A good Tuesday morning to all you folks out there in podcast land. This is Jack with Lee County Pod. Today we are doing one poem. We're continuing our series of unique and interesting poets and poetry. Today, Pete, would you please introduce our poem?
Thank you, Jack. The poem is Bringing Hannah Home, and it's by Esther Belin, a citizen of the Navajo Nation who lives on the Colorado side of the Four Corners. That's where four states meet each other, New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, and Utah. I think those are the four.
Yes.
Bringing Hannah Home is from her book titled From the Belly of My Beauty, winner of the American Book Award for Poetry in 2000. I'll go ahead and read the poem. We brought Hannah home today, an afternoon sun with a crisp chill in the air on a hill overlooking the bay. Two women with a child and a shovel and a frozen placenta wrapped in aluminum foil, places in a red plastic bag. I might have a typo there. Hannah was brought into this world, some say fourth, others say fifth, 5 days before we brought her home. The weekend of rain softened the earth, but the cold discouraged the shovel from denting more than the surface. I dug into the earth. The ground weakened beneath the strain I put into the shovel, pounding the ground, smooth and moist at first, then cold and solid. Pounding the ground warmed my arms. I thought good thoughts for Hannah and her mother and prayed for us all, remembering those who have passed on and those to be born. And I thought of my children to be born, and I thought of my father who has passed on. Breaking into the cold ground, I thought of the day we brought my father home. The night winter has frozen the ground, and the earth chipped like ice, slivers of crunchy coal beneath our feet, our bodies warmed by our work, and the earth chipped like an old tree being chopped, taking hours to finish. Our bodies tired from our work, and the earth piled high beside the cold, like the clouds, and just as fluffy. Our bodies natural, returning to the ground. I dug into the ground, digging out earth that would nourish Hannah, digging out life that would embody Hannah, and soon a small hole appeared, 4 feet deep. There we stood, two women with a child and a shovel and a frozen placenta wrapped in aluminum foil, placed in a red plastic bag. The frozen mass of tissue and blood and life was placed in the small hole by Hannah's mother, and I felt her heat, tissue and blood and life, squatting with bloody hands and cold earth, bringing Hannah home.
I find this to be a highly unusual poem in the sense that it leaves a lot to the reader's imagination about what is actually going on.
Yeah, and I had mentioned before there are no men in the poem, and just as silence can be as important as sounds in a poem, who and what is absent can be as significant as who and what is present, which I think is very true for this poem here. And Jack, I know we have talked about, I feel it's an intentional ambiguity. We don't know if the child is Hannah or not. And it's, as I say, I'm almost certain that's intentional. We brought Hannah home today in afternoon sun with a crisp chill in the air on a hill overlooking the bay. 2 women with a child and a shovel and a frozen placenta. And why I messed up on that is I have places here. It should have been placed when I read it, because she repeats the detail about the placenta at the end. But yeah, that is the child Hannah, or is Hannah symbolized by the placenta? Which I did look up. The sac-shaped organ that attaches the embryo or fetus to the uterus during pregnancy, blood between the mother and the fetus through the placenta. And so that could symbolize Hannah.
Well, I think that the mystery of the poem is Hannah alive or dead?
Yeah.
No, on first read, you get a sense that there was a problem with the birth, that there was either a miscarriage or it was a stillbirth, and this is a burial for a child. But we don't have any definitive lines that says Hannah died. But it's left to the reader's imagination about what is going on. Because one thing about the poem is that it is very much laced together with native culture. Okay? And it's something that you have to go digging for. Is this part of a native ceremony going on, burying the placenta after a birth, after a good birth? No, and I haven't done that chasing that down. So for me as a reader, I'm looking at this and I say, oh, the child died, Hannah died, and they're bringing her home to this place where this is their burying place. This is where this is where the narrator buried her father. This is the same, and she's come to the same land to bury her cousin or niece. The speaker.
Yeah.
No. So we don't have a clear picture of the entire story, which leads us, again, part of the power of this poem is the symbolism of life, the symbolism of the circle of life and death. The narrator mentions her father's passing. And again, a new life comes into the world. Whether it lives long or whether it lives briefly, it still is going to go back into the ground eventually. And again, just reading through this particular poem, what struck me on the initial read was the 2 women. One is doing the work of digging the hole. The other is holding everything together. She's holding the placenta, she's holding the child, and one person is digging the hole. The speaker is digging the hole. And again, it's the placement of the images. It's the 2 women are really the central focus of the poetry, I think, in the regards of what images you see. One is digging a hole, the pile of dirt is growing higher, the one is standing, holding everything together until you get to the bottom of the hole, and you start putting everything into the hole. And again, it's actually a very stark image. I find the images very stark, very concrete images, and telling a very poignant story overall.
yes, telling and showing in images, and a lot of emphasis is given to the solidity of the ground, the burial, the ground, the remains, and our bodies. The two women and the child, or is it just the two women? That ambiguity again, but then there's this too, a juxtaposition, I guess, a play on opposites. The hardness of the ground is really, it's there, it's present. In form, how this poem looks on the page, and there's some on the other side of this paper too. It flies out of your hands. The indentions in the left-hand margin give the effect of the poem cascading down the page, that flowing softness, that undulation juxtaposed with the hardness of the ground in the imagery itself, which just, I guess, gives the poem added depth, more depth, as well as other things that, such as warmed my arms, the body, our bodies warmed by our work, our bodies tired from work. There's a chanting in it, repeated, some phrases repeated and some repeated with variation. Pounding the ground, smooth and moist at first, then cold and solid. Pounding the ground warmed our arms. That repetition with variation. I thought good thoughts. I thought of my children. I thought of my father. I thought of the day, and so forth. And that chanting, the plural possessive, our bodies, is part of the chant. Our bodies warmed, our bodies tired, and so forth. Digging out earth, digging out the life, and the emphasis on the body really, toward the very end, the tissue, blood and life was placed in the small hole by Hannah's mother, and I felt her heat.
Right.
Closeness there. Maybe someone listening to this has read a poem similar to this. I never have. I've never read a poem quite like this one.
Yes, and I think one of the reasons that you may not have is it's very much ingrained within Native culture, especially among the Navajo culture. Again, I think you already mentioned earlier is that there's no men in this poem. There's no male figure associated with this poem other than the narrator's father.
Yeah.
But there is no active participant. There is no male figure who is with the women who is participating in this scene. And you get this sense that the women, in many respects, this is their role. That this is what their culture has defined for them to be doing. They're following the pattern of what they've been taught by their elders. And this is one of those aspects in which the women themselves are separated from the men. That the women themselves are isolated in the childbirth. They're isolated in the aftermath of that childbirth, whether there's a good outcome or a sad outcome. In many respects, they are the main participants and only participants in regards to what is going on here. Now, that's extrapolating a lot. That's pulling on threads that may not actually be there. But that's what I can imagine happening, is that there is this heavy cultural tradition that these women deal with when it comes to childbirth and child rearing, and even if the outcome, if Hannah died during childbirth, then it is the mother and her close female family who take care and deal with the aftermath. They're the ones who deal with the grief. They're the ones who deal with the burying of the placenta, the burying of the stillborn, if you will. And it's their tradition to do so. Again, this is something that, again, as a reader, I want to start go out and start looking at what the cultural aspects are regarding the Navajo Nation, and regarding, is this something that only women do? Is there a division, between masculine and feminine? What again, you see in the poem herself, her father, the speaker's father, she dealt with that. But what about his brothers? What about the other male members of his circle? How were they involved? That, again, this poem brings up questions. And as we stated earlier, it's very ambiguous. Outside of, there are questions that are unanswered, and I believe that those questions are very deliberate to be posed. Again, she writes something that is it hits you. It hits you emotionally, and you're not quite certain why it does that.
Yeah, and bringing Hannah home today, from where? From a hospital? Never mentioned. And you were traveling. We brought you home. Okay, you were traveling by foot. Question mark, but that could be, I think rightfully assumed, but not necessarily. There might be a car parked off in the distance, a detail we don't need, but we do need, I'm not, Donato winter?
Yeah, Donata.
Winter.
And that simply means Donata is the land of the Dene. Okay, it literally means basically Navajo land.
Okay, yeah, I probably did not pronounce it right in my initial reading, but we need that, a time element in the poem, and there's this. I dug into the ground, digging out earth that would nourish Hannah, digging out life that would embody Hannah, would or will, just that, all of a sudden that subjunctive mode of possibility, not that nourished Hannah, not that embodied, but would nourish, would embody, hint toward the future too, and then back to the past, and soon a small hole appeared. There's a lot of emphasis on the labor here, but also with the ing words, digging, squatting, and in the title of the poem itself, I think, too.
Yeah.
This progressive tense, this ongoing.
Right.
Like I was studying at some college, or I am studying at a college. Right. Ongoing, which I think is just to be aware of that helps for an overall appreciation of the poem.
Anything else that sort of just pokes at you?
That what?
That pokes at you. No, that's something. No, that is. What do you find that really captures your imagination about it?
Well, consider. I think we can appreciate something if we consider the alternative to it. And I'm going to hold this up again. Consider what the poem would be were these lines periodically but consistently indented.
Yeah.
The visual evokes a feeling
Right.
there, and that's like I used the word cascading before.
Right.
But there, every little thing counting really. Hannah was brought into this world. Some say some say fourth, others say fifth, 5 days before. Just a little detail like that, adds so much to the poem.
Yeah.
It makes you think about that. There's a little bit more ambiguity.
Yes.
Who were those some? And was it 4 or 5? The more important thing, or the important thing, is that you're saying it was either this or that. We don't need to have that exactness.
Yeah, and again, it also goes back to our perception of time. It's like, how do you perceive the day starts? Well, there are some people who perceive that the day starts at sunset. And that's based on their calendar because they use a lunar calendar. There are some people who think the day starts at sunrise. And against that, they base it off of a solar calendar. And so some say 4, some say 5. Well, it's how they perceive time. It's how they think in terms of that perception. So for some, whenever this occurs, if it occurs at sunset, well, it may only, to them, it may only be 4 days. But someone who wakes up in the morning and their day starts in the morning, to them, it may be 5 full days. It's just how they perceive the days. And there's that, again, as we go, we've been focusing on that ambiguity. But again, it also is tied to how we grow up. It's how we learn from our elders, from our parents, from our grandparents. It's how we weave life together, And throughout life, we experience, birth and death, and the cycle. Again, coming back to, what comes out of the ground will eventually go back into the ground and produce that which will come back out of the ground. When you think about the renewal of the seasons, the renewal of green things growing green, you plant a seed in the ground, it produces a plant that produces fruit, which you harvest, and then the seed goes back into the ground again. The plant eventually dies, but you have the seed, and the seed goes back into the ground again, which produces another plant, whether it be grass or squash or beans or corn.
Yeah, once again, the fertility of the earth emphasized. There's a generalization here. After she says, I thought good thoughts for Hannah and her mother and prayed for us all, you reader included, remembering those who have passed on and those to be born. And then toward the end, from the general to the very particular, squatting with bloodied hands and with cold earth.
Right.
I'm with the earth.
Right.
You know, I think that too is an interesting thing. None of the surrounding landscape is described. Nothing at all. You know?
Right.
But it doesn't need to be here. You know, it doesn't need to be in this poem.
I think that this particular poem on the page is extremely striking, and it does well to read it 2 or 3 times, multiple times, to really dig into the feel of it, dig into its rhythms, and to tease out the meaning of it, because you can get a very strong surface sense of what's going on, but subsequent readings bring you to that. You want to dig deeper. As a reader, I want to dig deeper into this poem. I want to dig it deeper into the setting, the scene, the people involved. I want to know more about who these people are.
And maybe the hardness in the emotional, psychological landscapes of the two women is reflected in the 4-foot deep hole.
Right.
I mean, this is hard ground.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy thing to dig a hole 4 feet deep.
No, it's not.
For anybody, And there's that to contend with, But that's something I hadn't thought about on a first reading of the poem. But there's one of the pleasures of this poem, as with so many really good poems, is you can look at one part of it and see how it fits the whole. Excuse me, the earth piled high beside the hold. The hold. Yeah, I got a typo there. Thank you. Like the clouds, and just as fluffy. Yeah. You're digging. You now it's soft. That hard earth. Those opposites of hard and soft.
Yeah.
And earth and sky.
Right.
All in. The second half of that one line and the full line that comes after it. Yeah. But what else about this? The hard ground, the frozen mass of tissue, that too frozen. Another similarity here. And then there's this too. The universal grief that a mother would feel burying her child, and maybe the child lived for a little bit after it was born, brought into this world 4 or 5 days before. How long did it take them to get to the burial site too? But that sense of universal grief touched upon there, of what this mother lost, of what the speaker lost also, particularly if the speaker was related to the mother, and consequently to Hannah. But there's what was lost, but we also think of what was found, and I think what was found is present in the poem. The one woman is digging a hole, the other woman is holding the child, possibly. At least the red plastic bag, and maybe the child, but digging the hole is comparable to writing the poem.
Right.
Let's say, the labor, really.
Right.
And once again, you can't help but be curious as to how long it might have taken the poet to complete this poem. But the fortunate thing for us is we have the finished product, and probably not too many people that are listening to this podcast are familiar with this poem. Maybe some are, but we enjoy bringing poems into our venue that people might not have known before, and we take pleasure in bringing those poems, and this is one good example of it, to you. Bringing Hannah Home by Esther Belin. Jack, any more?
No. Again, as you've already said, this poem to me is a very unique poem. It hits hard, and I think that again, you need to check out the author. You need to check out her works and her published works, and I think that's where we probably should leave it. Check out Miss Belin, because I think this is wonderful poetry. That's all I got. Y'all have a great day. Come back to our next episode of One Poem. We should have another one in a week or so. And feel free to check out our other videos. Y'all have a great day.